Welcome back, everyone. My next project is going to be updating this old dresser that I found. I really wasn't fond of the stencil, the legs, the skirt there, or the lip on the top. Even the drawer pulls just kind of scream dated to me. So I am going to give this guy a makeover and make it sleek and modern. I'm going to be replacing the hardware with something a little more simple, streamlined, and less fussy. It's another beautiful day here in Arizona, and I try to work outside as much as possible. I'm scraping off that layer of top coat before I go ahead and sand. The drawers were solid wood, so I am starting off with an 80 grit sandpaper just to get rid of the rest of that finish and sand down to the bare wood and get rid of that stencil. This skirt here on this particular dresser just kind of makes it look frumpy for the look that I'm going for, so I will be removing it. I thought the bottom sections of these front legs that were turned made the dresser look dated as well, so I removed them. Then I went and cut down the back legs to match the height of the front. Next, I wanted to match the height of the sides with the height of the front without the skirt. So I am just taping this off here. And even though the drawers were solid wood, the sides are just a thin pressed plywood with a thin layer of veneer over it. So I am putting a little piece of tape here, so when my jigsaw rips across it, it's going to minimize any jagged edges. The top had a couple of inches of lip, which I didn't like as well, so I decided to remove that as well. I finished sanding the drawers with a 120 grit sandpaper, and then finally a 220 before staining. The top was solid wood as well, so I used the same progression of sandpaper grits, starting with 80, then 120, and finally 220. The four corners of the dresser I decided to paint, so I am just scuff sanding those with 120 grit. I had to be careful with the sides because they were just a thin veneer, and I didn't want to make the same mistake that I made a couple videos ago on that dresser where I burnt through the veneer. So I'm just being very careful here with the 120 grit sandpaper before I go back over it with the 220. So I can get close to these edges where my orbital sander wouldn't reach. I just put a piece of sandpaper over a little block of wood, and that will allow me to get really close to those edges. I'm also just scuff sanding these little grooves on the sides and the sections in between the drawers by hand, just so that the paint has something to adhere to. Now that the sanding is all done, I am just taking a tack cloth to wipe up the whole piece down just to make sure I get rid of any residual dust that might be lurking around. A couple of the drawers had bottoms where the plywood layers were pulling apart from each other, so I needed to glue those back together so the drawers would slide in and out smoothly. I took a little paintbrush just to spread the glue around just to make sure that there was even coverage. I took an old shelf from a previous project and put underneath the drawer just so when I clamp it to my workbench here, it will press against it evenly and it will all seal nice and tight. Another one of the drawers wasn't so bad, so I just used these little hand clamps to hold it together while the glue dried. For the areas that I'm going to stain, I'm going to be pre-coating it with this Minwax Pre-Stain Wood Conditioner. What this is going to do is it's going to help even out all of the uneven wood tones, hopefully. I'm going to be starting with a base coat of this English chestnut color. Later, I will be adding an espresso color on top of that because I want it to be a really nice, rich, sophisticated color. When that first coat of stain had dried, I'm going to go ahead now and top coat it with the espresso color just to give it that extra dimension that I was looking for. Next step is to paint the corners and the strips between the drawers. I applied 2 coats of bare satin finish water-based poly to the whole piece with 3 for the top. I had these fairly simple pulls in my stash, and I thought they would be a better fit for the modern, sophisticated look that I was going for than those busy little pulls that were on the piece before. This was an interesting project. I took this dresser that was, in my mind, a little frumpy and dated and created something sleek, modern, and sophisticated. So I didn't mind chopping legs off, edges off, that kind of thing with this particular piece because it was not marked with a maker's mark and it was not the highest quality piece of furniture. So I actually think it turned out really great. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks again for watching.